I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. Ooh. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, keep winning, but you only go.
All right, what's going on, guys? JK back with another video. Today, I'm going to be going over each of the divisional round game and the NFL playoffs. I'm going to be giving you my predictions, kind of my takes on it, what I think will happen moving into conference championship week. But before we get into it, please make sure to like the video, comment down below with anything that you agree with, disagree with, and we have discussion down in the comments. And please make sure to subscribe to my channel to make sure you're up to date with all the future NFL content, whether it's for NFL free agency, the playoffs with the conference championships coming up, and the Super Bowl in about 3-ish weeks. Whether it's going to be the NFL draft, whether it's the combine, stuff like that. So please make sure you subscribe down below to keep up with all my NFL content I'm going to be making. So the wild card weekend was kind of a little bit crazy. Some of the games kind of went the way that I expected. Some of the games didn't. I did a recap on my channel earlier in the week. If you haven't seen that, please be sure to go back and watch that. I have also already did my Super Bowl prediction, although my prediction has might have kind of already changed a little bit just based off wild card and how some of the teams were playing, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it's going to stay the exact same. But we'll see here in a second. I'm going to go ahead and start out with the NFC side in the divisional round. I'm going to start out with the Lions versus the Commanders. Both these teams, the Lions are coming off a bye. Hopefully, they're trying to get healthy. David Montgomery is going to be back. That defense has a lot out. Although last game they played great against the Vikings. Although they kind of got exposed this week as frauds. This is actually the only game in the divisional round that's not a rematch from the regular season. All the three other games that are taking place have happened in the regular season, and this will be their second time playing them. The Lions versus Commanders, this is the first time this season that this is happening. So I think a lot of people are going to be picking the Lions here. I'm also going to be picking the Lions here. I feel like the main story of this game, obviously, I've said this many of times in my past videos, and I'm going to be saying it again. In the playoffs and NFL, to win playoff games, you have to play defense and run the football. And looking at these two teams, the Commanders were one of the only outliers to that last week against the Buccaneers, which I think is just Jaden Daniels making plays. They were the only ones. Jaden Daniels led their team with rushing yards with about 40 rushing yards, and they had under 100. The Lions, that's their story. They want to run the football. And I think that's just going to be what's going to happen. The Commanders are one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. I think they're ranked at 30th exactly. And the Lions are obviously one of the best rushing attacks with one of the best running back duos in the league. And Jahmyr Gibbs has been going off. David Montgomery's finally back and healthy, so that takes the load off of him. Um, I could see the Commanders kind of staying in this one at first, with Jaden Daniels maybe making a play, kind of like what happened with the Broncos and Bills last week. The Broncos got the ball first and hit a 50-yard touchdown right after that. I could easily see that happen with the Commanders, maybe on the opening drive. Maybe Jaden Daniels makes a crazy play, and maybe Terry McLaurin gets wide open behind the defense, something like that. I could definitely see that happen. The Commanders kind of staying around, but I think, and maybe the Lions come out rusty off their bye because they haven't played in a week. But I do think overall the Detroit Lions are a better team than the Commanders. If you look at the stats, it's not a very good matchup for the Commanders. Everything the Commanders are bad at, the Detroit Lions are one of the best in the league at. So I think the Lions are pretty handily going to win this one. If I had to predict, I would probably say about 13-ish, 2 touchdowns, I would say. I think maybe Jaden Daniels tries to force a ball, and the Lions and Aaron Glenn put on a master class containing him and pretty much get themselves a turnover and capitalize on it. So I'm going to say Lions by 2 touchdowns here in this game. Moving on to a more interesting game on the NFC side, the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams came out. They pretty much exposed the Vikings last week. The Vikings offensive line needs a lot of help by the way this looked. They had one of the playoff records. They had 9 sacks against the Vikings and Sam Darnold. Some people want to blame it on Sam Darnold. I think it was a combination of both the offensive line and Darnold. And it was also a good job by Chris Shula, the Rams defensive coordinator, combined with Sean McVay's offense that's always going to be ready, giving them different schemes and looks on their blitz packages. And much of their young guys that they had to pretty much hit on late in drafts, and Jared Verse, who was a middle of the round first round pick, that are really stepping up on that front seven for the Los Angeles Rams. The Philadelphia Eagles last week, they had to go against the Green Bay Packers. They pretty much exposed the Packers kind of too. They made Jordan Love give 3 turnovers. Jordan Love threw for 3 picks. Eagles had a forced fumble in there on a kickoff return opening. They pretty much came out, set the tone. I do think they struggled a little bit. But all in all, they got the job done. I do think they need to get the receivers more involved. AJ Brown only had 1 catch for 10 yards last week. But they got the job done with how they're pretty much built. They're built pretty similar to the Detroit Lions, I would say, just a lot more talented on that receiver aspect. But matching up with the Rams versus the Eagles, I think the biggest thing that's going to be a factor in this is the weather. It's in Philadelphia. It's outside. The Rams are a warm team in dome and SoFi. They can play in cold weather. It's an NFL team, but the way that the Eagles are built, they're built to play in that cold and be able to have that adversity to be able to set the tone early and kind of control the line of scrimmage. I will say the Rams shocked me last week. I did pick the Vikings, and I think the Rams defense is playing very well. This was a matchup in the regular season, and the Eagles at the time were kind of in a scud. Jalen Hurts didn't play too well in that game. The Eagles won it 37-20 over the Rams. The Rams kind of hung around with them for a half, but the moral of the story, where the Eagles beat them the first time earlier in the season, Saquon Barkley had a career day. He rushed for 255 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. I think this is kind of similar to Commanders. The Rams could step it up and hold Saquon a little bit, but I think the Eagles are just too talented compared to the Rams. I wouldn't be shocked if the Rams upset them. If I had to do an upset pick this week, this would be my pick. The Rams over the Eagles. If I had to pick an upset, I would definitely that would be my go-to upset pick. But I just don't know if many upsets are going to happen in this playoffs, and I think that the Eagles are very similar in the NFC with the Lions and Commanders. They're set up to kind of win football games in the playoffs, and them and the Lions are very similarly built. And I think that they're going to set the run tone with Saquon and the against them again. They have one of the best offensive lines in the league. If they are going to pull it off, they definitely need to get pressure on Jalen Hurts and kind of force him to make mistakes, which he definitely can. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think that they're going to move on to the conference championship, and we're going to have the Eagles versus the Lions. Okay, so now moving on to the AFC side. In the AFC side, we have 2 rematches that happened in the regular season. We're going to start out with the Chiefs versus Texans. In the first regular season matchup that they had, the Chiefs ended up winning 27-19 over the Texans on December 21st, the week right before Christmas. In that game, CJ Stroud had a lot of yards. Tank Dell kind of went off for the Texans, but he had 2 interceptions that kind of gave the Chiefs the lead. And those 2 mistakes, Mahomes had 260 and a touchdown. Xavier Worthy, that's when he started to really get implemented into the offense and started to get a lot more involved. So coming back with a rematch, Chiefs coming off that bye week, I think definitely is going to be a big part of the game plan. Andy Reid is going to be able to have one in the books to be able to score. Spags, I think Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, is going to be a big input on trying to get those turnovers again for CJ Stroud for the 2 interceptions that he had in the first game. And I think it's going to be pretty simple as well. I think the Texans are going to struggle offensively. They kind of did last week at first. They didn't put up any points on the Chargers until late in the second half, which the Chargers pretty much made their own mistake with Herbert throwing 4 picks and pretty much giving the Texans the ball and their defense playing really well. I do think it's going to be kind of close, but I think that eventually the Texans offense isn't going to be able to play up with the Chiefs. I think they're going to try to get Kareem Hunt going. They're going to have Pacheco going. And then they're going to implement Worthy and Kelsey into there. Worthy probably with some jet sweeps and getting him his speed, just the ball. And in this game, Tank Dell's missing from the first time. He's out for the year. So all you pretty much got is Nico Collins in your run game. I really just think that the Texans aren't going to be able to get their offense going, and they're going to make silly mistakes and just kind of give the Chiefs their game. And the Chiefs are just kind of going to sit back and not make any mistakes and just capitalize whenever they get a chance. So I think that just pretty much leads to this with the Chiefs and Arrowhead. Now, moving on to the biggest game of the weekend, possibly of the NFL season, that's pretty much going to hopefully live up to the hype. We have another rematch between the Ravens and the Buffalo Bills, probably the two hottest teams in the NFL right now. I know I usually say a lot with the run game. Run game means a lot. Both these teams got it going last week. The Ravens had almost 300 yards rushing against a stingy Steelers defense, although they had been struggling recently. The Buffalo Bills also got it going against the Broncos. That's not a bad unit as well. They had about 150 with James Cook and Josh Allen. Both these teams, when they met the first time in the regular season, the Ravens ended up winning in kind of a blowout fashion, 35-10. They pretty much jumped out hot right away and just didn't give it up. And I think that's kind of how this is going to be. If the Ravens jump out early, and because the way that they play football with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson in that run game, they're not going to lose. And the first time they played, Derrick Henry had 200 yards on the ground and a touchdown. The Bills' rush defense isn't the best. But with that being said, the Bills also do have Josh Allen. It's the two MVPs. They're going to be fighting for it. If they can get James Cook going and Josh Allen, I think is going to make his plays, that he will, and that's going to be the biggest difference maker. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick the Bills here to move on. My gut is telling me to pick the Ravens, but for some reason, mentally, I've just had my mindset. I'm picking the Bills to be able to make it to the Super Bowl. So I'm going to have the Bills winning this one in the conference championship. It's going to be all about the run game. The Bills are going to have to start out high. If they start out slow like they did last week, they're not going to win this game, and they're not going to be able to come back. And the Ravens are just going to control the ground and pretty much just beat them up. But the Bills have to come out hot, stay in it all the way. Josh Allen's going to have to make his plays. I think he's going to come out with the chip on his shoulder, not getting the all-pro selection over Lamar Jackson. I think he's really going to come out and try to make the biggest plays, and hopefully not turn the ball over. And I think that's really going to be the difference maker with him and James Cook. So those are my predictions for the conference, for the divisional round of who's going to be moving on to the conference championship. I'll be back next week with my prediction of who's going to be going to the Super Bowl. I'll also this weekend have up my recaps for each one of the games this weekend on each day on the Saturdays and Sundays. So please make sure you're keeping up with that. Make sure you keep sticking around and subscribe to the channel to be able to keep up with the NFL content. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple.